Welcome to Home on the Range, the official podcast of 1881 Ranch, bringing you the latest on the products, topics, and techniques for the shooting, hunting, and adventure lifestyles. Here is your host, tactical deployment of small arms expert and 1881 Ranch Director, Will Egbert Jr.
Thanks again, everyone, for joining us. My name is Will, and I am your host here on Home on the Range. This is episode number 3, and today's topic is going to be very general. Let me get through with that. A very general introduction to my go-to photography kit. All right, so I'm going to touch a little bit about my history as a photographer, where I came from, how I learned it, blah, blah, blah. And then we're going to go into the kit. And we're going to try and keep this kind of short and brief because, again, this is just kind of like an introduction as to what's in my go-to kit. So the box that I've got, that's got all my really cool stuff that I'll always pull to first, outside of my iPhone. Because let's face it, I mean, we're all snapping, digital moments on our phones. And we're going to have a whole episode with that. I think we're going to get a friend of ours, Whitney, to sit down with us and talk about mobile photography, some of the best apps out there for editing and things like that. But that's a separate episode. So right now we're just going to rip down some of the really down and dirty secrets of what makes a commercial photographer or landscape photographer, however you want to talk about it, what makes their gear so special. Okay, so let's jump into this. I used to get this question quite a bit. So while I was going through some rehab, I was teaching at some outdoor photography classes, along with Calumet Photographic, teaching some studio lighting techniques. And everybody would get hung up on what gear do I have? What gear do I have? What brand? What is this? What exactly is it? What it is? And I would always try and stop people right then and there and be like, "Whoa, just calm down. Don't go too crazy. Understand this. It's not the gear completely. I should say that it's not only the gear. It's the way you use it, right? Going back to that old saying. But it very much is the gear. So there's 2 principles behind this. Number 1, we have to consider your budget. And number 2, we have to consider what the output is. Like, what exactly are we trying to do? Are we trying to create a work of art that's going to be seen all over and multiple commercial settings or packaging and that? And are we going to try and shoot that with a low-grade item and some low-grade gear? Or are we going to try and, be realistic about it and shoot it with some high-end technology? So we kind of have to diverge through this conversation and come back, and then diverge again, separate, and come back, and again and again. So you go a little easy and try and understand that the flow of picking a path in photography really has to do with one of 2 things. You're either going to try and get this going on a budget so that you can get some techniques down, and that find out whether or not you really enjoy this, and this has got a future or a passion for you, past a hobby, or are you going to use this for the rest of your life? And when I say the rest of your life, I mean when you invest in equipment, people always say, "Oh, you've got to invest in your equipment." Well, you don't ever get that money back, so it's not an investment. Or if it is an investment, it's very poor. But you have to invest. I'm going to use that term lightly, right? You have to invest in your equipment in order to get anything worthy out on the other side. If you're going to use it for anything other than a 4x6 print or the background on your mobile phone, something like that. So that being said, there's a couple different principles. The first one we're going to talk about is quality versus quantity. Okay. It's very important that you understand a simple principle, right? If you buy yourself a Ferrari, and you put in some really crappy gas and you chintz out on the gas, what you're going to get out of the Ferrari is less performance and more problems down the road with maintenance and some issues. Maybe you'll have water in the engine and some rusting, a lot of bad things. I don't even know if does a Ferrari block, is that steel or aluminum? I'll have to look that up here. So you wouldn't rust in an aluminum block, but nonetheless, the principle I have always gone with, and this is just because I don't ever want to, I've learned my lesson a couple different times, and I really hesitate to say this, but it truly is the mantra for all things. Buy once, cry once. And I've fought that probably half my life. Never in my motorcycles, but that was a different thing. I want to say that my motorcycles definitely took up more of my passion than photography. So, so I would always top out on that. But the principle behind buy once, cry once is that you're only as good as your equipment. I don't care how good you are. Your skill level is always limited by your equipment. So if you're going to go into rock climbing, you're never going to traverse K2 or ascend K2 or Everest or anything like that with shoddy equipment that you bought off Amazon. It's going to break. It's not going to give you the performance you need. It's going to be too heavy. You're not going to want to pack it, things like that. So that's where that whole mantra comes from. Now, that being said, you also have to understand that your budget is going to dictate where you go. And we all know this, right? I mean, this is kind of inherent. But trying to get trying to get people off that dead center to understand that if you do like this, if this is something that you want to do, don't look back. Spend that money where it really counts. And over the years of teaching classes and being on workshops and really using my gear for a lot of different things, from commercial photography in the studio to doing location photography for high-end custom motor vehicles, concourse type cars, to doing aviation air-to-air photography, landscape photography, and then back to just doing stuff for the kids. It's always come back to the same thing. What piece of equipment is the first thing I need to spend money on that needs to be quality? So that's what everybody would see. Well, let me back up. So in all the classes that I was teaching, everyone would be like, oh, I need this lens, and oh, I need that body, and I need this, and I need that. I said, stop right there. First of all, you should not, don't ever think that you're going to take let's say a $5,000 camera, because we're going to talk about the body, the battery, and the lens. Right? We're going to go DSLR for a moment. You're not going to take a $5,000 high-end camera and put it on a $100 tripod. You're not going to do it. Sure, go ahead. Go do it. When it falls off, when it doesn't lock into place, when pictures all come out fuzzy, you're chasing your tail and you can't figure out why. So I'm going to give you guys some tips that have really been, that have rung home over the years, and I've chased the ghost. I've chased the rabbit down the hole, couldn't figure out what was wrong with the problem until one afternoon I had an older photographer come up to me, and he kind of poked me, and he said, so you think you're hot shit, huh? I said, what are you talking about? He's like, oh, you're a rookie, huh? And he was literally poking me, like poking the bear really bad. He was pushing my buttons and making fun of me. I didn't appreciate it, but my mentality has always been, well, if someone's that forceful and that persistent, they must know something. What am I missing? So I want to learn. So I asked him, I said, what am I missing? I don't get it. He goes, oh, top here, top products. Yes. Your lighting is good. Your this is good. Your that's good. And you can't figure out why your images are blurry. I said, yeah. Your tripod stinks. What? Come on. It's just a tripod. It holds it. It's metal. It's aluminum. It's a very nice tripod. I think it was like $200 at the time, and this was like the third tripod I ever bought. But I still hadn't committed yet. And he goes, nope. The bigger the tripod, the thicker the tripod, the more rigid, The more rigid when that shutter, now I understand we're in the age of mirrorless right now, but go back a few years. When that shutter flips, there's vibration in the camera, and that's going to make fuzziness. You're not going to get the sharpness you want. I said, no kidding. So I started saving right away, and I got myself this gorgeous tripod. And it's carbon fiber, and it goes out to 12 feet high. I mean, the thing is a monster. It's heavy. It is not the type of thing you take on a backpacking excursion. But there are there are really nice tripods out there right now that are carbon fiber, and they're very lightweight, very robust. They're a thick tube, but they're very short. So they're good for, doing field work. But I've always said that if I'm going to hump the expensive glass and the heavy glass, I'm going to hump my big tripod, because I never know what situation I'm in, and I might actually need that last foot on the tripod just to make it more stable. And lo and behold, I have tripods. Let's spell that wrong. And lo and behold, I have. So that was my first piece of really serious gear. And up to that point, accessory gear, I figured out that it was what was lacking in my mentality and my choices. Okay, so now let's go back to budget. Okay, now we're going to swing back around. But, I don't have $1,000 to spend on just the tripod. Okay, I got it. Great, you don't. Let's see if we can't top out your budget right then and there. Okay, so the particular tripod I was talking about is a Gitzo. And this particular Gitzo, I can't remember the name of it. I'll have to go dig it up, and I'll put it in the description areas below here. But it's massive. But it's a $1,200 tripod, easy. Then you need a ball head, you need your fluid head, you need whatever else you're going to put on there to attach to your camera. You're going to need a plate system and all this stuff. If you diverge from that a little bit and you go budget, all right, so let's say you've got a budget of $200. I'm going to say right away, double it and save your money. Save until you can actually afford a tripod that's double the cost of what you thought you could only, I can't fathom spending more than $200 on a tripod. Double it. And ultimately, you're going to double it and double it again, double it and then double that again. But if you can jump into a $500 tripod right away, you are going to have that for a long time, because that technology does not change. As long as it is at a certain level and has certain capabilities, comes from a quality house, Gitzo, really right stuff. I haven't, the Pro Media gear, that's great stuff too. That's made here in Illinois. Those are all great brands, and they're serious stuff. Okay, so you're never going to outgrow them, and they've got quality parts, so they're not going to break. And if they do break, you can get replacements or get warranty work done on them very easily, and you don't need to worry about it. So now we've come back into the budget side, and remember, we're trying to build a war chest of equipment that never goes away. Right? So we can use this when we go into mirrorless. We can use it when we go full digital or full video and start pulling stills out. We want to be able to use the same equipment again and again and again, because it becomes second nature to you. You become familiar with it. And your base attachment system needs to be just as robust. So whether you use Arca Swiss or Really Right Stuff, that doesn't really much matter. But the only thing that's going to change after that point then is the plate system that goes on the camera. So when you sell your camera, you're going to sell the plate as well, because you don't need it anymore, because it's camera specific. And then you're going to get a new camera with a new plate system, and that's that. Hopefully you don't have to change your lenses. Now, when you start going into mirrorless from a DSLR, you're going to have to get an adapter, or certain mirrorless will handle the same lenses. We'll get to that in a second. But the first thing you have to understand, buy once, cry once. You had no problem buying the bigger body, but then you never thought about, I'm going to buy that cheaper plastic glass lens. Well, it's light, sure, and I can go from 50 to 350 zoom, but the lenses don't align, and you're not going to get a crisp image, and you're always going to be hating yourself for spending the $100, because the $100 could have went on a new plate, or it could have went on a new adapter, or it could have went on a leveling system, or a quick adapt head, something like that, or a lever, a flip lever, quick detach. You're going to look back on it and be like, man, I wish I could get that money back, because you can't get the money back. See, it's easy if you bought an old Ferrari, right? It goes up in value. Oh, I can get that money back. But you buy a piece of crap from Amazon or something, you'll never get that money back. It just went into the hole, went into the ground, and now you've got something maybe your kids can use if they're into playing with cameras or video cameras, stuff like that. But that's the first thing. So the first piece of kit in my gear is a very, very, very high-end tripod, because remember, that's the base for all your images if you're going to use a tripod. Okay? And I would recommend you top that out and just go overboard on it. And you're going to look silly in your head to yourself, your wife, your spouse, whatever. You're going to look silly, and you're going to be questioned. But trust me, it'll always pay off in the end. Okay, so there's that. Then let's back up. Where are we going to go with this camera? Is this a hobby? If we're going to use it as a hobby, then I would say, stick to the middle low of the road. Get yourself something with detachable lenses, so at least you can get one or two lenses. Because a point and shoot with an internal, hard lens, that's there. It's never going to help you. The other thing is to make sure the body has full manual controls. You want to be able to control the ISO, the white balance, shutter speed, and the aperture. Okay? You want to be able to put a hot shoe on it and run a flash if you want to. And there's basically just 5 things there. That's it. I mean, you don't need anything really trick. You just need full manual control. Okay? And you need a decent body. So from there, everybody would be hung up as to what glass is in my box. And it's very, very simple. You need some basics, right? So you need a wide angle. You need that 16 millimeter maybe. Gives you that real wide fish angle. Those are very expensive. And unless you're doing landscape, it gives you a very weird image. So if you're going to round out your entire kit, right, you can go 16 or an 18 to 24 if you're going to do a variable. Then you're going to instantaneously jump up into what everyone refers to as the primes. I got 24, 50, 85, and then you can get into the hundreds. Now those are primes. Those are fixed. So typically you can get those down to your 1.4 aperture levels and really, really get that shallow depth of field. But you got no zoom. But the pictures look amazing because there's no compression in it. And it's kind of hard on a podcast or even on a video to show you compression without showing you side by side the movement in there. But a telephoto zoom lens is always going to give you compression. And to those of us in the industry can look at an image and go, oh, that was shot with a zoom, because you can just tell how things have been compressed. So if you want things to look very natural and you don't even know that you're looking at it as a natural, you're like, oh, wow, that's a really great photo. And you don't even put 2 and 2 together because it just kind of subconsciously your mind goes, oh. But if you're looking at it from the industry side, you can be like, oh, I shot with compression. And sometimes you want to do that and sometimes you don't. But very good 24 millimeter lens is great. Let's see here. What's Canon got right now? They're switching all the time, right? So a 24 to 70 is probably, I think that's what they're pushing at now, right? Yeah, 24 to 70. All right, you're looking at about $1,600 for that lens, and it'll get you pretty much across the board. So you can get by with one lens for a pretty long time. And then you can jump up into the 75 to 200. That's one of the gold standards as well. And you want to keep your telephoto lenses overlapping and your primes in the middle. So when you get done completing your kit, you've got all the same glass, it's all the same mounting, and it's all by the same company, and you want to top that out. Don't screw around. Top out the glass. Now there's other things, a declicked the guys will use declicked photographic lenses for video. They'll actually send them in and they'll have all the clicks, the actual stops in the aperture ring. They'll have them removed and ground out so you can pull apertures and things like that. As far as pulling a focus, you can also pull apertures. But that's getting off into the weeds. But you really want to maximize your glass. Don't ever look back, right? Because your glass is also going to predate and postdate your camera body. So if we are shooting 5D Mark II and the new Mark III comes out, hey, we got a backup body. We got the Mark II for a backup body. We go right back into the Mark III, and guess what? All of our lenses line back up. And this is kind of one of the hardest things for young when I say young photographers, I don't mean in age. I mean like young in experience. Some of the hardest things for them to understand is that they want to get all of this gear and stuff it in a bag when they need 2 lenses and a body and a wicked tripod. And that's going to allow them to do everything in the world. I've never been on a photography course, had students or been a student and been limited by my glass because I didn't have enough lenses. I was always limited by how good my glass was. And, is the optic really that clear? Has it been aligned to the sensor? And is it clean? Right? I mean, if you want to, you could take a really great lens, and if the back side of the lens, if the first lens that goes inside the camera, if that's dirty or has spots on it, it's going to create this big fuzzy halo inside, even though it's just a speck of dust. So you've got problems there too. All right, so let's run down. What's in my bag, right? What's in my kit? I got a really wicked 12-foot Gitzo carbon fiber tripod. I'm running a high-end body, and I used to run Nikon, and now I run Canon, just because I started getting into working with the folks from Canon North America, and they kind of laughed at me. I went to a meeting. I was sitting there with some senior executives in Canon at the new Canon, U.S. headquarters, the brand new building that they had built. They were only like maybe a third or a quarter of a third of the people actually moved into the building. And on one of the top floors, I was actually the first meeting in the conference room. And I sat down, and I'm walking through Canon headquarters, and I check in, and I'm being escorted everywhere. No one really notices that the camera I've got swinging around my hip off my big Vulture rig is a Nikon. Until I walked into the boardroom. And I sat this thing down on the table, and it was like the music stopped. And I got looked at, and they're like, "You did not." And I said, "Did what?" "You did not. You brought that in here?" I'm like, What's the matter? It's a Nikon. Big deal. It's a nice camera. You guys make nice cameras. You push the button, you clicky. It takes the photo. Who cares what's on the outside of the body? And oh boy, was I educated. We all know that there's this whole Nikon Canon thing, but that was kind of fun. It didn't really dawn on me that it would still transcend, that feud would transcend all the way up the food chain, and it did. But nonetheless, they didn't hold it against me. They just said, hey, look, if we're going to start working together, we have to get you outfitted with some Canon gear. We can't have you walking around with Nikon stuff. So that's kind of why I made this whole switch over to Canon, because I didn't want to keep 12 lenses on the Nikon side and then not use it, and Nikon bodies and things like that, and then get into the Canon side and start doing all of this, only for time to expire, and then knowing how technology is, I haven't touched my Nikon stuff in so long that this happens and I'm outdated or transitioned out. So that's kind of where we went with that. Okay, so where was I? All right, so we got a great body. I usually always carry some sort of 5D, the current model and last year's model. And those are my backup bodies. They're smaller. They'll always have the remote, the extra battery grip. They'll always have that available to me as well. Because sometimes I want to use that and sometimes I don't. If I'm going kind of light and I just want to keep an extra body around with 24 to 70 on it, that's what I'll do. But as soon as I wanted to, if I ever needed a backup with the external battery and needed the vertical grip and things like that, I would always have that available for me. So time is money. Well, when you're on a camera, when you're on a photo shoot set and one of your cameras has a hiccup or maybe something's not right or the mirror freezes open or you can't figure out something or maybe your tech or your helper drops something, you need to be able to pick up something else that you're very familiar with that can do the same job and go right back to work. So that's how that was. And a lot of the times I was shooting things that were perishable. Like I couldn't come back to this, 1951 Bugatti. It wasn't going to look the same in a few days. So by the time I got my camera fixed or anything like that, I missed my opportunity. Or I was shooting some knives and we're talking about sushi. It's going bad. And now I got to stop the set, go out and redo everything the following day. So now we've wasted $400 in sushi and so on and so forth. So you always want to have your backup body when you get to a certain level, right? And especially if you go on an adventure photography trip. Always have a backup body that is the same mount as your lens, as your core lenses. You can start there, but always top out your glass. Don't go with the cheaper glass. Don't do it. Don't do it. It'll bite you. You'll look at it and go, oh, why didn't I just spend the money? I would still have all these lenses. And that's true. That's totally true. So top out your lenses. Even if you're putting a really expensive lens on a $500 body, okay, don't worry about it. What you're doing is you're getting the lens for the camera that you're going to use in the future. And you can always get your money back out of your lenses. Well, most of it. But while the technology changes fast on the camera body side, it doesn't change that fast on the glass side. So you're pretty safe there for a little while. So if you hit the photography market or pastime and you think you're going to be doing this seriously, then go that way. Always top out your glass first. So top out your tripod first. Top out your glass second. Then go into your accessories for the lenses. So what I mean by that is your filters are always going to be attached to your lenses for whatever you're doing, right? So they're not going to switch around, or I said that wrong. You're always going to need filters for these lenses. So get them up front. And those you can do over time as well. You don't really need to go out and buy $2,000 worth of glass filters. But you definitely want to buy the best glass filter you possibly can that's available at the moment you buy it. So first piece of lens, glass. It's not going to be a UV protector or a lens protector. Okay? It's just another layer of glass that's just going to degrade your image. Trust me, when you start zooming in and you get into really high-end editing software, you can tell it's just not as crisp. Your camera's trying to shoot through a last piece of glass that is not aligned, that's not part of the system, and that's not ground for that specific reason. Okay, so get that off. The first piece of glass you're going to want to put on the end of that lens is a circular polarizer. That's it. That's it. Cut and tape, walk away. That's the only thing you'll need on the front. Second piece is you're going to need some sort of, if you want to keep going into like landscape photography, everyone says to shoot, 2 stops low, to shoot under 2 stops when you're doing, so you need in order not to do that and have your whites blow out or your highlights blow out in the sky, you need to either drop down 2 stops or meter from the sky and shoot that. And then have all your forestry or your landscape be uber dark. Or you go get yourself a nice piece of, graded, a transition or graded 2-stop neutral density. Okay? And that should be a graded from like Tiffin or something, but get glass, don't get plastic. Get the glass. You can always hold it up to the lens, guys. Don't worry about that. Unless you're doing a long exposure, then you'll need the housing for it. But get glass and get it a little bit bigger. Get it bigger. Don't get the camera size. Get the video size. There's another trick for you. Get the size that's meant to go in a housing and an actual, light box, that goes on the end of a DSLR, movie rig or a RED or an actual movie camera, right? get a larger size glass. That way you've got plenty of room to hang on to it, and you've got plenty of room to play around, and the gradation is bigger too, right? So you can drop that sky down without losing the details and the highlights and the shadows and having to screw around with your gamma back in later in post in the foreground. It'll wonders, right? So now so far we've got a tripod. Wicked. I mean, people should drool over this thing. Like, you pull this out of your bag or your trunk and people should go, oh my God. That's the idea. You open up your bag or your box, boom. Everyone goes, oh my God, you've got the high-end glass. Number 2. And you don't want to blow them away. That's not what you're trying to do, right? You're just trying to create a seamless transition of, of continuity. You don't want to go back and keep buying this stuff again and again and again. You'll have just shelves full of trash. Okay, from there we get into the body. Pick your body, pick your poison. At that point, it really doesn't much matter because you're already putting it on a camera that'll accept the mounting platform will accept the high-end lens. Okay, so you've got your Nikon mount, your Canon mount, and then there's something called a PL mount, and that's a cine mount. So don't get confused. There's some cameras that'll actually allow you to do that, and there's adapters and stuff. But don't go down that line too far because it's kind of overkill. I mean, a lot of us use cine glass on our DSLRs, and it's kind of cool. And then we put it on our point and shoots, so you got this like 5-pound or 6-pound lens on this like iPhone. It's just something funny that you'll see people do, and it really has no real effect. So there we go. We've got tripod, we've got lenses, we've got our polarizer, we've got our neutral density graduated filter, and we've got a body. All right, now what do we put it in? This is something else that you really have to kind of imagine what you're going to be doing with the cameras most of the time. Okay? A backpack is nice, but most of us work out of a car. So we're going to pick up whatever we've got out of the car, and we're going to go walk across the parking lot, maybe half a mile down the trail, and we're going to set up. That's about it, about a half a mile. When you think about it, a half a mile is pretty long. So there's a couple different options, and I'm sitting here looking at a stack of Pelican cases 6 feet tall. And there's 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18. Oh, there's a big, I forgot about my coffin and those 4 other cases. You're looking at about 20 Pelican cases, and they're all different, and they're all meant for different things. But I've always invested my money in a quality hard case that I can transport my gear in, I can use in the back of my trunk and use it as a step-off, or I can actually store in. And I don't have to worry about somebody dropping or kicking. The only thing I have to worry about is somebody stubbing their toe on these things because they're incredibly hard and clumsy. So that's the route I take. And then secondly, I think about what type of bag I'm going to put this in, what type of soft bag. And if I'm going to do some like guerrilla stuff and, okay, I'm just going to run and gun, I'm going to grab my biggest body because it's typically got my biggest battery in it. Or if I want to stay lighter, I'll grab my backup body with the vertical grip because now we've got more batteries, so we can even stretch out even longer than the large body. And I can take one lens, mount it on the camera, and take another lens and throw it in a big soft bag like a Mountain Smith padded, lens bag or something. Now, I'm not going to get into bags, guys, because there's so many every single quarter. There's a new one, 3 times a year. Everyone comes out with bags. We got tactical bags. We got purses. We've got satchels. We got messenger bags. All that stuff is great. Just remember, you've got a very expensive piece of glass sitting in your bag. You don't want to chintz. So maybe go with like some sort of taco wrap. They used to have these tacos, soft wraps, or some sort of neoprene cover, and then stick it in the bag. Okay, make sure the bag is padded, of course, and it's just kind of that one's preference, whatever. But the nice thing about having some sort of hard case or weather-resistant case that's polyethylene or polypropylene or something like that is that you can seal it and you can ship it and transport it, and you don't have to worry about it ever getting damaged inside there. Because you're gonna have a lot of money tied up in this. So if you're working out of your trunk, why do you need a backpack? If you're gonna spend most of your time around the house taking pictures of the kids, or maybe taking one lens, putting it on your camera and go to the ball game, get yourself a single lens, single body, single lens type bag from like Tamron or somebody like that, or Mountain Smith, so that you can take that to the ball game or something. Okay, so now that we've got the core gear and we've got the case, right? So I use Pelican, but there's a lot of different. There's Pelican Air, and then there's probably 4. You got SKB, you got Plano now, you got a lot of different guys coming into the market. You've also got some cases coming out of Italy that are really cool. They got red handles and red lashes, and they're very, very lightweight, and of course they're very strong because we're into modern manufacturing and plastics. So that's great. Case Cruiser, and I'm not sure if Pelican makes this anymore or does now, but there used to be an attaché or a carry-on size Pelican case with backpack straps on it. And Case Cruiser made it, and it was my go-to bag, my go-to case for a long time for doing mobile stuff, because I would only carry a couple lenses, my body, my charger, some batteries, and some of my stuff, my blower and my filters and things like that. And then the top lid held my 15-inch MacBook Pro and all my cables and connectors. And I learned that from another commercial photographer who used to travel like that. And he did a very good job. And he was always had a mobile station set up. And it was like wickedly quick and fast. And he had all of his stuff there. And he was out and up inside of minutes. And all of his stuff was protected. So I kind of took cues from those guys. And this is all stuff that you can still use. So you don't have to worry about your new laptop is not as thick as the old ones. Just go get yourself a piece of fun foam from Hobby Lobby or Michael's and just stick it in there, and it takes up the room. Better yet, why don't you go get yourself some cloth, some really heavy cloth from the fabric store, and cut it and have somebody seam it up and everything and make it a hood, and fold that up and put it in the space. So that way, when you're out in broad daylight, you can throw this over the top of your head and over the top of your computer and actually review some of your images without having the daylight come in. That was another trick I've learned. So there's a lot of these different things, and we're just trying to going over the main meat and potatoes. And these are going to be classes. I probably should have said this earlier. These are going to be some of the classes that we're going to do out at 1881 Ranch. I'm going to go right back into this stuff, and there's some really cool photography spots out by the ranch where we can do this kind of stuff. But the core meat and potatoes of learning these things all transcends technology. So you don't need to worry about any of the other things. These principles of buy once, cry once, and protect your gear will always be true. So there's your core set of equipment, right? So we've got a wicked tripod. I like carbon fiber. I like Gitzo. That's what mine is. But Really Right Stuff makes some wicked stuff as well as Profoto. And from that, I'm going to use some Really Right Stuff heads. They've got a bunch of quick adapters. We'll have another one on that. I'm going to pull down all of the different part numbers and things like that and get you guys up to speed, because this has been some time since my particular head was manufactured. But the ball head that you use has to be huge. That's the one thing I forgot to mention. Your ball head needs to be massive. Do not skimp on that, because that goes to the rigidity of your tripod. And you're going to isolate out all of your vibration. You will also make sure that you have a rock solid platform, and that when you throw that lever or tighten down that knob, I prefer knobs. I don't like levers, because I think sometimes you can go too fast with a lever, and maybe it doesn't go all the way closed, and then you bump the camera or you make some things and it wiggles open a little bit, and then all of a sudden, it opens all the way up and your camera falls off and poof, right into rocks. So I prefer, a big knob, because you have to actually work at it and, really spend some time, and it's tightening as you're tightening it. But the other nice thing about having this rock solid ball head is the fact that when you tighten it down, you tighten it down halfway, it's a lot smoother because you're dealing with a larger ball inside the socket. It can withstand a lot more weight, So if, let's say, you're using a couple strobes attached to your camera and they're out a foot, 2 feet above your camera, that's also like, that weight is hanging out there and it's putting more pressure on the ball head. And that's that. Plus, when you drop your tripod and things, it can handle a lot more abuse, those types of things. And I've been using mine all over the desert, all by the ocean. I just, in the dirt. I brush it off with a boarhead bristle brush, and that's it. It does really great. So we've got our tripod, our ball head, our plate, whether it's an Arca Swiss or Really Right Stuff. And then we got our camera and our adapter for the camera right there. Once again, we want to use really good glass. Like if you're going Canon, get that EF grade lens and just top it out. Okay. If you want to take one extra step up from there and get an actual manual lens, then the sky's the limit. I've seen some $50,000 lenses, like the big shows like NAB and things like that for video. And it's just like, wow. And you look through it and it gives you an odd sense. So putting this whole thing, getting back to putting a cine lens on a DSLR or a mirrorless camera, it kind of gives you this, I don't know, it's a little softer on the edges. It's just, it looks really cool, but you have to know what you're looking at in order to kind of understand it. Otherwise, it kind of falls away. All right, so we've topped out the glass lens. Top it out. Then we need our filters, circular polarizer. That's going to help you in shooting and getting down reflections, getting the reflections off of water. It's going to take that down, and you can dial that down. Okay, that circular polarizer is actually a 2-piece filter, and some of the lines are going horizontal and the other lines are going vertical. And then they twist, and they'll either line going, in one direction, or they go parallel to each other or perpendicular to each other, and it goes darker. So, you can control that. You can also use that to engineer stops of light as well. So it's a very useful filter, and it's a very useful piece of kit. But once again, don't buy cheap. Buy the best freaking circular polarizer you can get your hands on. Not what you can afford. Save your money. You'll always use it on all your glass. Then we go to our body. Of course, you want to spend whatever you can there. And that's the only spot, believe it or not, that's the only spot that I would say budget your money on your body. Of course, you're going to need something to bolt to your glass. That goes without saying. But budget there, because technology changes so fast and so furiously that by the time you figure out if this is a hobby or this is a pastime or this is a passion, your body's going to change. Well, mine has changed, 1, 2, 3, 4 times. 5 times. So I've gone down the road of some of the Fuji stuff in the beginning. Then I went back into Nikon. Currently I'm sitting in Canon, but then I'm going into digital and using digital from like a C300 or C500, and I'm pulling stills. A couple of my buddies, they all shoot on red, and once they made that transition from medium format, because I did the whole phase 1 thing, digital medium format, love that, didn't have a use for it anymore, and then moved away from that and went into the 1DC. So I was able to get some 4K. It's got great low light, stuff like this. So, everything changes so fast. And now we're all into mirrorless. And the 4/3 or 3/4, and it's like I'm like wrapping my brain, because I'm getting back into photography now that I've got some time and I've got some access to land and some more adventures in that. It's almost getting like, okay, now I got to get rid of all my lenses and my bodies again and get all fresh. And I'm like scratching my head. I'm like, I don't want to do that. I don't really want to do that. I want to go get a new body and use all these new lenses. And I was talking to a couple folks the other day, and they said, just go get a Metabones adapter and stick your Canon lenses on your Sony. Remember, if you get good glass, you can always get an adapter. It'll always center up, and it'll always go back on. Now, you might have a crop factor. You might have some clipping or whatever, but it's good glass. It's perfect. It's there. Put it on the camera, and you can run with it. Your bodies might change, but your lenses will stay the same for a lot longer, okay? And you can also use those lenses on film cameras and video, because a lot of people make adapters for that. Or you might just get that EF mount on a C300 or a C500 or a Red or a Blackmagic or something. So I mean, there's different ways that your body is always going to change, and your glass can stay the same for a lot longer. So don't chintz on that. What else goes in my kit? I've got a couple of microfiber towels. I don't mean not those little silly ones. I go to like Sam's Club or Costco and I get the big package, and I'll cut those things up and then roll them over and have them stitched at the seamstress, or go back upstairs on my sewing machine and just rip that off. So I'll have those for wiping everything down or wrapping things and stuffing them in my bag. Let's see what else. I've got an air blaster, one of those Rotojet sprays or puffers. That's pretty important. What else do I have? I don't clean my sensors. I'm sorry. I hate to disappoint everybody, but I'll clean my sensor like once a year. I know it's horrific, but as long as you remember to keep your camera body pointed down, okay, when you change your lenses, that's less likely for stuff to fall down inside your camera. Let's see what else is in there. I talked about, I've got a really nice Purdy brush. You go to Home Depot or Menards, wherever. Go in the paint section and only get a natural hair Purdy brush. And I use an angled 2-inch in my kit. And then I cut the wood handle off about halfway so it can fit. And then I'll usually wrap that in a piece of, like a Ziploc bag or something, just to keep the bristles in one place. So I can take that brush and stuff it in my bag, and I can brush off my lenses and things like that. So that's a kind of a mobile piece that'll always run between kits with me. You've got some card management issues. A lot of different cameras now are using smaller cards, so that's not a big issue, as it used to be with compact flash cards that had a whole bunch of dots, like holes in it. Those would collect dust and bits of sand and grit, so you always wanted to keep those, locked away in these little vaults. Pelican made some card vaults that were beautiful. You could take one vault, it held 4 cards, big CF cards or whatever. I'm dating myself now, I know, but you'd throw that in your pocket and you'd be gone all day. You'd put 2 in your camera and throw 4 in there, and you'd never have that. The other thing is, you always want to buy a really good card. I mean, that goes without saying. SanDisk. I'm sure Lexmark is back up to speed. There could be a couple others now, guys. I'm kind of out of that, but that really doesn't matter as far as brand. You just need to make sure that you've got the right speed to handle whatever it is that your camera's running, so you don't top out your buffer. And I think that's about it. I'm going back to the core. I'm trying to go through my kit, and I'm looking through it right now, and there's all the rest of this stuff is, like I've got levels and clamps and all sorts of stuff. It's nonsense. It really is. I might use it, once every 2 years or something, and it just kind of sits there. So everyone likes to fill their case with gadgets and trinkets and stuff. So you can do that on your own. I don't need to show you that rabbit hole. You'll find it on your own. That is about the end of what I can offer you. You might want to throw a GoPro in there or something. That way you can, duct tape your GoPro to the side of your camera and shoot video at the same time. Believe it or not, it sounds rudimentary, but how about a roll of gaff tape? I don't like duct tape for that reason, because it's a little too gummy. But then again, you can't use your gaff tape for too long. It gets gummy as well. But gaffer tape is cool. It cuts easier, so you don't have to use your teeth and all that stuff. And it's black. It's non-reflective. So you can actually take that and use that and tape your filters to the outside of your lens. I know it looks kind of ghetto maybe, but it's all about being field expedient. And sometimes, at a sunset, you might only have 5 minutes. So if you always have a roll of gaff tape in your backpack or a small roll of athletic tape, you're perfect there. A brush, your blower you can leave at home or whatever, because that's kind of one of those things that you don't typically need in the field, running back and forth. Batteries, buy factory batteries. They come with a factory warranty, so if they catch on fire in your bag, you can go back to Canon and say, "Yo, bro, what's going on? My stuff just exploded." And then a quality bag or box. That's pretty simple. from there, we're going to get into the next photography podcast we'll do. I think we're going to talk about some real simple settings and talk about ISOs if you need to. So we'll check out the channel's still really light. I don't really know what else I can give you guys on top of that. I think that sums it up. And I guess I'll leave you guys there. Please hit some comments down below if you need to. The channel's pretty light, so if you'd spread the word, that would be wonderful. And we look forward to seeing you guys out on the ranch. Okay. Thanks again, everyone.
Thanks again, everyone, for tuning in to another installment of Home on the Range. Remember, if you enjoyed this episode, make sure to like us on Facebook and follow us on Instagram and Twitter. Till next time, stay wild and true to your heart.